The Utah recruiting train continues to roll on. Utah landed one of the top players in the state of Utah, and we're going to dive into how Utah goes about their recruiting when they miss out on prospects, as well as talk about some of the other top in-state prospects on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media. You can make sure you follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today to keep up with all the latest with Utah athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You can visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. My name is JT Wistersill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by recruiting expert and former Utah and BYU and several other places kicker Moose Bingham on today's show. And Moose, we got to talk about one of the top players in the state of Utah committing to Utah. You get Cyrus Polu, a class of 2025 linebacker from Desert Hills. So not here in the Salt Lake area. So not everyone might be familiar with his game, but this is a great get. 215, 6'2", an elite linebacker prospect who, Moose, I know you were saying before the show, you think if this guy were in maybe a different situation, he might be getting even more hype. This is a great get for the University of Utah.
Oh, he definitely doesn't get enough hype. I mean, Cyrus Polu has been one of my favorite players since he was a sophomore. He is hilarious because you watch his game, they'll throw him out at corner, and he's a shutdown corner. They'll put him at safety. They'll put him at rush end. And he can do it all and then some. You're looking at his stats, you're like, oh, he isn't lighting up the stat sheet. It's because everyone's game plan that plays Desert Hills is run away from him because he's an absolute dog. Cyrus is he is a man among boys, especially in his division. And he's a kid, at Desert Hills, he had offers all over the country. He had Michigan State, Stanford, UCLA, Cal, Washington, Arizona State. He's a kid that everyone was going after. And I'd laugh because when I visited these schools, they're like, do you know who we really like from the state? And I'm like, who? They're like, Cyrus Polu. And I'm like, me too. He's my number one linebacker for a gosh darn reason. And it's because of his versatility. He's going to pair super well with the other linebacker that we have committed to Utah in Christian Thatcher.
Yeah.
And honestly, Polu would be a 4-star, but I think those two being in the middle in Utah's traditional 4-2 defense, that's a scary sight to see. But Cyrus is athletic enough, he's skilled enough, that he could be one of those DB spots as well to make more room out there. So you're going to see Morgan Scally just lights up when he talks about Cyrus Polu for gosh darn good reason. But I'm excited to see what Scally can do with Polu because I know there's a lot of fan bases that are heartbroken because they didn't get him. And he's a kid that I think would have a Lander Barton type 4-star or higher linebacker situation if he had gone to the camps like some of these other kids. But he just didn't care. He's like, I kind of want to stay in the state of Utah. It's going to come between BYU and Utah ended up winning out because their pitch is fantastic right now.
Yeah, it is fantastic. You mentioned the pairing with Thatcher. That's something that gets me excited, just like how this fall, when you're talking about two players from the same class playing together, we expect to see Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, two of the prizes that Utah got in that outstanding 2024 recruiting class that they were able to lure. Or actually, that was their 23 recruiting class. So their 23 recruiting class that they were able to bring in. So you're talking about whenever you can get guys in the same class that could potentially play together for a few years and be building blocks like that, that's really exciting. And I mean, yeah, you mentioned it. He is an absolute monster. This is a great get for the University of Utah. And we've talked about it a little bit in that last segment, Moose. It's very important to recruit your own state. There's so many great talent that's out there all around, but you don't become one of the best programs in college in general if you're letting the top players in your own state go elsewhere. And that's something Utah's done a really good job of, including this recruiting class outside of guys like Polu.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because sometimes you're okay letting guys from your state go other places, but when you have a amazing high school sports situation here, like you do here in the state of Utah, you can't let guys escape. You can't have Jeffrey Bossa going other places. You can't have Jackson Powers Johnson. You can't have a Garrett Bowles. But Utah has done a great Penei Sewell, a Nephi Sewell, all these guys that go different places. Sometimes they end up back at Utah. Sometimes they end up at different schools. But you have to recruit them till your dying breath at this stage in the game. But Utah's done a great job, especially recently. You look from 2016 on, 8 of Utah's top 10 all-time recruits have come from 2016 on. There's just been a couple outliers. And the 2 guys you talked about, in Fano and in Lomu, they're 6 and 8 respectively in all-time Utah recruiting, according to 247. So you can see that Utah has gotten better and better and better at getting these high-profile kids, and they're seeing NFL success as well.
Yeah, they are seeing guys who are having those opportunities. You mentioned a guy like goes somewhere else and then comes back, Garrett Bowles, right? Then has that success at the NFL level. And Jalen Johnson coming to Utah, he was one of those high recruits that you kind of talked about, has having a ton. He just got the bag at the NFL level. So he's been having a ton of success here. Moose, outside of Polo, who's clearly one of your favorite players in the class that Utah's landed, is there anyone else who really stands out to you as an in-state player Utah's brought in the class of 2025?
Well, you know what? The only other one we can really talk about is Carson Kafusi, and my goodness, that young man has stolen my heart. I love me some Carson Kafusi. He is an absolute monster. I saw him at the All About You camp. He's listed at 6'4", 250. That's a lie. I know he's trying to skinny up because he's like, I'm playing tight end this year in D end. And so they're letting him play tight end at Skyline because they're just like, do whatever you want. We're just happy that you're here. But he is a massive individual. He was dominating on the D-line during one-on-ones in what I saw the All About You camp, and he just played so well. And they're like, just lock it down. We want you. You want to be here. And he's like, you got it. And so Carson Kafusi has garnered a lot of attention. If his team was a little bit better, you would have seen more schools going out to him. But he is a kid that's an absolute dog, and Utah is lucky to get him. He's definitely going to take up the flag of phenomenal players on Deacock and do what he needs to do.
You mentioned a phenomenal player that Utah is lucky to have. We're going to talk about a player who is absolutely phenomenal, who Utah doesn't have, but maybe has a chance to get, in Jerome Miles, as well as how Utah goes about recruiting a 5-star and all the behind-the-scenes things that go into what happens when you miss out on a player. So many fun things still to come on this episode of Locked On Utes. We'll be diving into. But first, I want to discuss with you all our fantastic friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer and fewer games. And sports aren't sporting like I want them to, honestly. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime when I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer fun. And speaking of the lack of sports, we still have Major League Baseball. Obviously, us in Salt Lake, we're hoping we're soon going to have a Major League Baseball team. So you can check out what's going on in the world of Major League sports. This is a big time as we gear up in the Major League world before the All-Star break. Teams still jockeying position, want to be in a good spot as they approach that break coming up. So make sure you guys look over everything MLB related, and you can head over to FanDuel today. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Moose, talking Utah recruiting right now is something like Polu is a fantastic get for Utah. He's an elite linebacker. Thatcher, a 4-star, an absolute dog. Like, there are so many great players that Utah has been able to get. But understandably, a lot of people can't get Jerome Miles out of their head because it's a 5-star receiver potentially going to the University of Utah. And Moose, that is something where it's just like, I can't even believe that's still a thing. I've talked about Miles a lot on this show, but I want to know from you, someone who does recruiting for a living, who has played the game at the University of Utah, even like that. Like, do you think Miles is worth the hype? And do you think that Utah is in this?
Well, those are two very interesting questions. Let's start with number one. Is Miles worth the hype? I don't think you've talked about him enough. That's how much hype he deserves. He's an absolute dude. I mean, he runs a 10-3. He's 6'2", 220. He has the hands that have been blessed by the great Lord above. My goodness gracious. He's almost chiseled like a Greek god. That dude is as physical as they come, and he's hilarious. He will go up, and he's almost pulling like a Michael Jordan or a Larry Bird saying, hey, I'm going to run this route. Try to stop me. And you're not stopping him. He is amazing. I can't say enough good things about Jerome Miles. I mean, when he left West Jordan, his coach was almost in tears watching him go, because not only is he the best wide receiver I've probably ever seen this state, but he's a great specialist as well. He's a great kicker. He's a great punter. There's nothing the young man can't do. If you threw him in defense, he would do a great job. If you said get the water, you'd have the freshest tasting water from a glacier in Alaska. My goodness, Jerome Miles is amazing. Now, does Utah have a chance? Utah does have a chance. I think they've got about a 25-30% chance of getting Jerome at this point. He really likes what's going on at Ole Miss, but it really depends on who Utah can put around him. Utah just got another recruit for this class, 8th of the month, in Malali'i Asiata. There's a kid from 6'5", 330 out of Australia. But who they're going to have in this class is really going to sway him to either stay home or take the bag from Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is in the SEC. They've got a lot of money. Can Utah match the money? Are they going to make it a hometown thing? That's what I'm wondering, because football doesn't last forever. But Jerome has set himself up to set his family up and himself and his living conditions for life. And so Utah had a great chance to pitch him. I know that we have one of the top offensive coordinators in the entire country, and he's paid so. So with that, our offensive coordinator is like, hey, I'm going to throw you the ball. We've never had a receiver like you. We've wanted a receiver like you. We've had tight ends. We've had running backs. We've had good receivers, not a 5-star though. And if they bracket you, I don't care. They're going to be bracketing the tight ends. We'll still throw you the ball. And we have your security blanket in an Isaac Wilson. Ask him how it's been here. See what's going on. And that could be the straw that brings him into the fold. But Utah's going to try everything, throw every single recruiting dollar that they possibly can to land a 5-star, because Utah, in the whole history of this school, the highest player they've ever landed is Clark Phillips, who is a very high 4-star. But I don't believe that Utah's ever landed a 5-star according to 247.
I don't think they ever have either. And you made all the great points about, hey, like he has his high school quarterback here in Isaac Wilson already. It's staying in the state, but whether it be the NIL bag and also just, the SEC allure and everything there's a lot of positives about Ole Miss too. So it's going to be interesting to see what Utah can do in this hunt. But Moose, I got to go back to something you said. You said he's the most talented player that you've ever scouted that's played in the state. Compared to the other top receivers in the state of Utah that you've evaluated, what attributes set him apart?
So you look at like a Cody Hagan. Cody Hagan had elite speed. Jerome Miles ran a 10-3. He's faster. Just that's how it is. You look at a Simi Fehoko. His body control was unbelievable. Turn on the championship game against Skyridge. Jerome Miles' body control was better against better competition. You look at a Ty Jones who just mossed people. Jerome's can do that better. Anything you think that a kid may have him beat at, they don't. And I love every single one of these receivers. I love all of them. I think they're great. Jerome just has a little more potential right now. Is he going to realize it? I don't know. That's where coaching comes in. That's where mentorship comes in. If you can get him around a Sharif Shaw, if you can get him around some of these coaches that the University of Utah has, that could be a game changer. But you have to make sure that he has the right people surrounding him. And he was able to do that on his own by going to Corner Canyon and being around a football mind like Eric Kerr. by seeing what guys do, like Noah Care and Tate Care. Tate Care, not Noah. Sorry, I still love Noah, but it was Tate Care. But seeing that Tate Care was a better route runner than him, and it's like, hey, Jerome, you're really good at this. You're not as good at these things. It opened his eyes, and he's like, I have to work a little harder. And you're seeing that now. But Jerome has all the potential in the world. It's seeing if he can realize it.
It's absolutely the case. And he's got a great chance to, but this is something I also caution and try to remind everyone on this show. Like, the reason Utah was back-to-back Pac-12 champs back in 21 and 22 was they were beating a lot of the teams that had the 4 and 5 stars that weren't quite working out. So it's all about the fit and everything there and the type of player they are. I got all the faith in the world that Jerome Miles is going to be great, but like you said, there's still no 5 stars a guarantee too. So it's going to be interesting to see how it ends up playing out for him. And before we move off from Jerome Miles in particular, Moose, I'll ask you this, and you hinted at this a little bit with the job Andy Ludwig has probably done laying out, hey, this is how you'd be using this offense. And he literally, I mean, we don't even need sources. Jerome said himself on X, he went out there and tweeted out, like, they answered the only question he had. And someone's like, what was the question? And he literally said, I just wanted to know if they were going to throw the ball more. So obviously they had a good pitch to him as well. But I mean, just what has gone on behind the scenes in the recruiting effort in general? Do you feel like, I just feel like, I mean, this is a Utah team. They averaged 23 points per game offensively. Fast forward 6 months later, well, more than 6 months. And you're telling me now they have a chance at a 5-star receiver? I just feel like that's such a testament to the recruiting team and the coaching staff.
Well, last year was kind of an anomaly. Well, Utah went through more injuries than almost any team I've seen.
I know.
And it makes it difficult. Mm-hmm. Jerome is a kid that can step in day one, and he could probably step in today at the U and start. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. So Andy Ludwig has a lot ahead of him, but he was able to be like, hey, I've been able to run my offense with a 5th-string quarterback, and I've been able to run it with a 1st-string quarterback. It doesn't matter to me, but I want to open my playbook up, and you're the person that does that. And so Andy can do that. And Andy really is not going anywhere. In all of these guys' contracts, if Witt's there or not, they're going to be at the U for a little bit because they signed 2-3-year deals, unlike most schools where it's a year-to-year deal. And so Utah, they've got the consistency. They've got a lot of things going for him, and it's his hometown school. It's a place he's wanted to go, but the allure of the SEC is tough to turn down.
The allure of the SEC is very tough. The NIL is potentially tough. Lots of things that make the challenges in recruiting collegiately the truth. And the also truth is you're going to miss out on some of these guys. BYU actually just beat out Utah for a pretty prominent prospect. We're going to be discussing that and the significance and how Utah can pivot from a missed opportunity in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you all about our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because simply put, with eBay, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Again, it's ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, Moose. Utah has gotten some wins in recruiting. We talked about Cyrus. They're trying to win the battle for Jerome Miles, but there's also some battles you're going to end up losing. And LaMason Waller III is a 4-star wide receiver, top ESPN at 300, just an absolute beast. And he is a guy who, Utah had some interest in, but look, he's going to BYU. It's a guy you'd obviously love to have here. Utah, he's a talented receiver. But what I'm curious to ask about you, Moose, is we get all focused and locked in on this recruit. We're doing that with Jerome Miles in a lot of ways right now. But that is obviously not the case inside the recruiting department. They have other players on their board. They have plans. Anytime you're doing a recruiting cycle, you hear a lot of no's. How does Utah prepare and react when they do have a player who decides to turn them down and go to another school?
Well, anytime you lose out on a 4 or 5 star, there's weeping, there's wailing, and there's gnashing of teeth in the recruiting department for about 30 seconds. And then you're like, all right, next guy up.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I was at BYU, we went after Tanner McKee pretty hard. LDS kid going on a mission, 6'6". He ended up committing to Stanford. And we're like, oh, crap. So we went after Isaac Wilson's brother at that point. And even though that was our number 2, what's nice is there's a huge void of talent in the country now. It's not just like, hey, when you miss out on a 5-star, there's no other options. There's lots of other options, and there's lots of other kids. And that's why we're seeing a lot more talent seep up and even get overlooked. Like, you're seeing a Weber State that is putting guys that are hopping in the transfer portal that are all conference the next year. And you see that all the time from the Division I AA level. I did that at BYU twice with Kian Norman and Andrew Eide, who both had NFL opportunities and were at SUU. So you're able to see that it does suck when you miss out on a guy. The fan base is upset, but it's not the end of the world because sometimes that isn't a fit. Even with 5 stars, about 60% of 5 stars don't pan out. And when I say don't pan out, it means that they don't start, they end up transferring, and their career never gets going, really. I mean, Utah has a former 5-star at quarterback.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go.
Yeah. And has his career panned out? No. But he gets another chance at Utah. Yep. The nice thing is if you're a first-round draft pick in the NFL or if you're a 4 or 5-star player, you're going to have other opportunities at the end of the day if you hop in the transfer portal. If you're a 3-star, it may not be as much. So someone at some point saw talent in you. And whether you cultivate that or not, that's up to you. And I think Utah has a great trajectory for the kids that come in to help them cultivate the talent that they've been blessed with.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job. And like you said, the best way to be prepared for any outcome is to just have multiple potential situations, be on top of have everything thought out already. And Utah clearly has that. But you know a great way, Moose, you can try a land a recruit is being one of the first to offer and get to him. And that's who Utah was able to do over someone who's very familiar to BYU, as they recently offered Tommy Olson, who is, of course, the son of Hans. But so happy for him that he gets this opportunity to be offered by the University of Utah. Everyone's going to see the name, of course, as well. But this is a guy who seems like he's really carved out a nice role for himself at Lehigh and feels like he would have a chance at Utah if he gets up here. I think he could be a contributor, Moose.
Yeah, I really like Tommy Olson. I mean, it's really funny, the shots that are fired across the bow from different schools, who's offered where, what's going on. And I even saw that with Gennaro Guilford's kid was at the All About You camp and training with Sharif Shaw, the defensive back coach for BYU. And Sharif was like, I might offer this kid. And I'm like, don't be his first offer. But that's the thing. Recruiting is a game. Wherever you get shown the most love is where you end up going a lot of times, because these kids want to go where they're going to be used. They want to go where they have a future, and they want to go somewhere that has a plan for them. If Utah has a plan for Tommy, that's awesome. If BYU steps up to the plate now and they're like, we want him, that's great. But I love to see the recruiting. I love to see what's going on. And I think Robert Blecken's doing a fantastic job at Utah right now.
Yeah.
They're finding diamonds in the rough. They just got the Alciata kid. They're getting kids where everyone's like, I don't know about that. And kind of in the old Utah formula that they're developing kids. But on top of that, then they're getting 4 stars and they're like, okay, we can really compete. Utah's done a great job in this class getting some fantastic kids. Like another kid that really lit it up for them is JT Buchanan, 6'4", 200 pounds. He's a kid that you're like, this kid is raw. He can come in. He can dominate. And I love to see that. And Scally knows what he's looking for. So it's fun to see the guys that they're still like, we're going to develop this kid and he's going to be part of our future. But then they have the day one starters as well that can come in and do what they need to, like Christian Thatcher. So Utah's doing a really good job in Nevada. They're doing a great job in California and Hawaii and in Utah. But this class isn't even close to done. And it's going to be interesting how Utah's handling it with the transfer portal. How many guys will they bring in from the transfer portal versus how many high school kids will they bring in? Because it's no longer just winning the game by bringing in 25 high school kids. Sometimes it's less and really supplementing them with the transfer portal.
Yeah, and that's what they chose to do with the 2024 class. So it's been interesting to see the focus shift back to more of the high school class. It feels like this year, while still some quality transfer being brought in, no doubt, after the 2024 season winds down. And speaking of quality additions, Moose, anytime we can land you on our show, it is always one. Tell everyone what you got going on.
One of the big things I'm doing is I'm going to the Covey Classic, actually.
Right.
So Britton Covey's putting on a golf tournament for Bridals of Hope or something like that. And it's really cool. I'm excited about that. So if you guys can support that, that's always cool. I've got the Utah Preps podcast, always good stuff on there. And I just have a plethora of things, to be honest with you. Just every day is always a new adventure. Today I ran 7 miles. That's the farthest I've ever ran.
There you go.
And I almost died doing that. So it's always fun. It's always fun to talk about Utah football and Utah high school football. And there's so many good things happening. I'm just excited for the season to come around.
Well, I am as well, Moose. I always get fired up whenever you join me. Great stuff as always. Thank you again. And please pace yourself when you run because I would like to have you on this show again.
It's not the pacing, it's the hills.
That's
the hills
fair.
are killing me. I'm running in the mountains. We live in Utah. I love it.
It's fantastic. It's the best. Moose, thank you again for joining us. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Utes. But we got more. We got to talk about JJ on tomorrow's show. So much more recruiting news to come out. We will see you on tomorrow's Locked On Utes.